Please, my baby's dying. The words came through the door like a knife. Evelyn Carter stood frozen, her hand on the deadbolt, her heart slamming against her ribs. Through the frost-covered glass, she saw him, a massive Hells Angels biker, tears frozen on his face, clutching a newborn whose lips had turned blue. Behind him, a young woman lay face down in the snow, not moving. 5 houses had already slammed their doors. One man had pointed a shotgun at a dying infant. Now they stood on her porch, seconds from losing everything. And Evelyn had to choose. Before we continue this incredible story, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to see how far this reaches. Hit subscribe and stay until the very end, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about strangers, family, and second chances. The pounding shook the door frame. Evelyn didn't move, couldn't move. Her fingers had gone white around the cold cup of tea she'd been holding for the past hour. The pounding came again, harder. Then a baby's cry, weak, fading. Evelyn dropped the cup. It shattered on the kitchen floor. She didn't notice. Her legs were already carrying her toward that sound, toward that desperate wail that cut through the howling wind like a knife through silk. She yanked back the curtain. Her heart stopped. A man stood on her porch, huge, shoulders like a bull, leather jacket covered in patches, skull's wings, words she couldn't read through the frost. He was hunched over something pressed against his chest, his whole body curled around it like he was trying to shield it from the storm itself. Behind him, a woman lay in the snow, blonde hair splayed out around her head, not moving. Please, the man's voice broke. Please, ma'am, my baby's dying. I can feel her getting colder. Please, I'm begging you, please. Evelyn's hand found the deadbolt. Walter's voice echoed in her skull. You can't just open your door to anyone, Evie. Not anymore. The world isn't safe. But Walter was dead, and that baby had stopped crying. The silence was worse. How many? Evelyn heard herself ask. The man looked up, tears frozen on his cheeks. What? How many doors? 5. His voice cracked like breaking ice. Last one guy pulled a shotgun. Didn't care that I had a baby. Didn't care that my wife collapsed. Just saw the jacket. Evelyn turned the lock. The cold hit her like a fist. She gasped, but she didn't step back. She grabbed the man's arm and pulled. Inside, now, move. He stumbled through the doorway, already unwrapping blankets from the bundle against his chest. Thank you. God, thank you. Her name's Grace, 6 weeks old. We were trying to get home. Later, Evelyn pushed past him, dropping to her knees beside the woman in the snow. Help me, your wife, now. Together they lifted her, dead weight, barely breathing. They dragged her inside, and Evelyn kicked the door shut with her heel. The wind screamed in protest. By the stove. Careful. Lay her down. The man lowered his wife onto the braided rug, then spun back to the baby, his hands shaking so bad he could barely hold her. Give her to me. He hesitated. 1 second. 2. Now. He handed her over. The weight that settled into Evelyn's arms was too light, too still. Oh, God, she breathed. The baby's skin was gray, lips purple, eyes closed. Breathing so shallow, Evelyn had to press her cheek against the tiny mouth to feel it. Pot. Under the sink. Warm water, not hot. Go. The man ran. Evelyn ripped open her cardigan and pressed the baby against her bare chest, wrapping the fabric around both of them. The infant's body was ice against her warmth. She could feel the cold seeping into her own skin. Come on, Grace. Come on, baby girl. Stay with me. She rubbed circles on the tiny back. Gentle, steady. The way she'd done 1,000 times before, back when she still believed she'd have grandchildren to hold. Come on. Your mama needs you. Your daddy needs you. You fight, you hear me? You fight. The man returned with the pot and a stack of blankets. His hands were shaking so bad, water sloshed over the sides. Soak a towel. Wring it out. Put it on her feet. Not too hot. He obeyed without question. The woman on the rug stirred. Her eyes fluttered. Grace, where's Grace? She's here. She's with me. Stay calm. She stopped crying. In the snow, she stopped. I know, but she's fighting. Your little girl's a fighter. Minutes crawled by. The fire crackled. The wind howled. Evelyn held that tiny life against her heart and refused to let go. Then a sound. Small, weak, but unmistakable. A whimper. then a cough, then a cry. "Oh, Jesus." The man fell to his knees, his whole body shook. "She's crying, she's crying." The woman somehow crawled across the floor, tears streaming down her face. "Grace, baby, can you hear Mama?" The infant's eyes opened, unfocused, then slowly finding her mother's face. A tiny hand reached out. Evelyn felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been sealed shut for 7 years. "She needs to eat," Evelyn said. "When did she last nurse?" The woman's face crumpled. "I don't. Hours ago, before the car went in the ditch. I tried, but my hands were so cold I couldn't. Can you now?" "I think, yes." Evelyn helped her peel away the wet coat, the soaked shirt beneath. The baby latched out, immediately suckling with desperate hunger. The man watched his wife and daughter. His face was raw, stripped bare, all the walls torn down. "Jack," he said suddenly. "Jack Morrison. That's Sarah. That's Grace." He swallowed hard. "I'm a Hell's Angel. I know what that means to you. I know what you see when you look at me. But I swear on my daughter's life, I'm just a father trying to keep his family alive." Evelyn looked at him, really looked. Mid-30s, face weathered, but not hard. Eyes that held more pain than a man his age should carry. The patches on his jacket screamed Danger Skulls, Wings, Hell's Angels, Montana. But his hands were still trembling, and his eyes never left his daughter. "Mr. Morrison," Evelyn said, "I taught school for 43 years. You know what I learned? Can't judge a book by its cover. Can't judge a man by his jacket." She pulled a blanket around Sarah's shoulders. "Now, you're going to tell me how you ended up on my porch, and I'm going to heat some soup, because we've got a long night ahead." Jack stared at her. "You're not afraid of me. I'm 71 years old. I've buried a husband, lost a son to his own choices, and survived 68 Montana winters." She turned toward the kitchen. "Fear and I made our peace a long time ago." The soup was tomato basil, Walter's recipe. Evelyn hadn't made it since he died, but her hands remembered the motions, the canned tomatoes, the dried basil from the garden, the cream that made it rich. Jack sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a steaming bowl. His eyes kept drifting back to Sarah and Grace by the fire. "We were at a rally in Billings," he said, "charity event, raising money for veteran mental health programs." He paused. "I'm a vet, 2 tours in Afghanistan. ID took out half my squad. I came back wrong." Evelyn set down her own bowl. "Wrong how? Nightmares, flashbacks, so couldn't hold a job. Couldn't be around normal people." His jaw tightened. "The VA gave me pills that didn't work and appointments that never came. I was drinking myself to death when the angels found me." "Found you." "Man named Razor, chapter president. Showed up at my motel room one night. I had a gun in my hand, loaded, finger on the trigger." Jack's voice dropped. He knocked on the door and said, "Brother, I've been where you are. Give me 1 hour before you pull that trigger. 1 hour." Evelyn's throat tightened, "And you gave it to him." I don't know why. Something in his voice, something that said he actually understood. Jack looked up at her. That 1 hour turned into a whole night, then a week, then a year. He got me sober, got me working at his garage, introduced me to brothers who'd walked the same road. He shook his head slowly. "Most people see the patches and think criminals. They don't see the guys who saved my life." And Sarah, Jack's face softened. She was a nurse at the VA hospital in Helena. First person in that whole system who actually listened to me, actually gave a damn. His expression darkened. She got fired for it. For listening at Bonnie from Espimema. For reporting a doctor who was stealing painkillers and selling them on the street. Hospital didn't want the scandal. They blacklisted her instead of investigating. His hands tightened around the bowl. 20 years of school and training, and they threw her away like garbage. All because she did the right thing. Evelyn thought about that. A woman who'd sacrificed everything for integrity. A man who'd been saved by strangers when his own country abandoned him. "You're not what I expected," she said quietly. Jack laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Nobody ever is, Mrs. Carter. That's the problem. People see what they want to see. Makes it easier to hate." He set down his bowl. "Can I ask you something? And go ahead. Why did you open the door? After 5 houses turned us away after you saw the jacket, why?" Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Her eyes drifted to the mantelpiece to the photograph of Walter on their wedding day. My husband died 2 years ago. Heart attack. Right there in the living room. She pointed to a spot near the window. I was in the kitchen when it happened. By the time I got to him, by the time I called 911, it was too late. I'm sorry. My son Derek blames me, says I didn't call fast enough, says I could have saved him if I'd paid attention. Her voice cracked slightly. Maybe he's right. I don't know. I think about it every day. Every single day. Mrs. Carter. When I heard your baby crying, she continued, something in me knew I couldn't let another family lose someone. Not if I could stop it. Not if I could do something different this time. She met his eyes. I opened that door because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. Jack reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was rough, calloused from years of work. Your son is wrong, he said. You can't control a heart attack. You can't blame yourself for something like that. I know. In my head, I know. She smiled sadly. But hearts don't always listen to heads. Gender. By 2 a.m, Sarah had finally fallen into a deep sleep, Grace tucked safely against her chest. The fire burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Jack sat in Walter's old chair by the window, his eyes fixed on the storm outside. Evelyn watched him from her rocker. You should sleep, she said. Can't. He shook his head. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face turning blue. I see Sarah falling in the snow. His voice dropped. I keep thinking, what if you hadn't opened that door? What if you'd been like the others? But I wasn't. But you could have been. He turned to look at her. That's what scares me, Mrs. Carter. How close we came. How easy it would have been for this night to end differently. Evelyn considered that. He was right. If she'd listened to the fear, if she'd let Walter's warnings win. I suppose that's why we have to keep opening doors, she said finally. Because you never know which one might matter. Jack was quiet for a moment. Then you remind me of my mother. Oh, she died when I was 16, drunk driver. His voice was flat, controlled. She was the kind of person who would have opened her door too, no matter who was on the other side. She believed in people. She sounds wonderful. She was the best person I ever knew. He looked over at Grace. I named my daughter after her, Grace Marie Morrison, same name. Something warm bloomed in Evelyn's chest. That's beautiful. Sarah wanted something trendy, some celebrity name, but I told her our daughter needs a name that means something, a name that reminds her every day of the kind of person she could be. The fire popped. The wind whistled through a crack in the window frame. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the world. Jack, Evelyn said slowly, can I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone. Anything. She took a breath. I had a grandson once for 3 days. Jack went still. What happened? Fever, some kind of infection. They never figured out exactly what. Her voice trembled slightly. He was so small, so perfect. I held him in my arms and I promised him I'd always be there. And then he was gone. Jesus, I'm sorry. It was 7 years ago. Derek was still speaking to me then. He and his wife were devastated. They never tried again. She paused. And then Walter died, and Derek decided I was the enemy. I lost my husband, my son, and the hope of ever being a grandmother, all in 2 years. Jack didn't say anything. He just leaned forward and took her hand. When I held your Grace tonight, Evelyn continued, her voice breaking. When I felt her warming up, felt her starting to breathe again, it was like I was being given another chance. Like God was saying, you couldn't save your grandson, but you can save this child. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. The storm howled. And something shifted between them, something that felt like understanding. Mrs. Carter, Jack said finally, I need you to know something about the angels, about what it means that you helped us. What do you mean by finding them? We have a code. When someone saves one of our own, really saves them the way you saved Grace tonight, they become family, protected, forever. His eyes were steady, serious, and that's not a threat, not intimidation, just fact. You're under our protection now. Anyone who threatens you, hurts you, tries to take something from you, they answer to us. Evelyn blinked. I don't understand. You don't have to understand, just know it's true. He squeezed her hand. You opened your door to strangers in the worst storm in 40 years. You saved my daughter's life. That debt doesn't get repaid with a thank you card and a fruit basket. It gets repaid with loyalty, with protection, with showing up when you need us. Family. The word hit her like a punch. She thought of Derek, who hadn't called in 6 months. She thought of the empty chairs at her table, the silent house, the growing loneliness that had become her constant companion. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Jack released her hand and leaned back in the chair. Just know that when you need us, and I pray you never do, we'll be there. No questions, no hesitation. The storm broke at dawn. Evelyn stood at the window watching the first pale light spread across a world buried in white. The snow was piled knee-deep against the porch, glittering like diamonds in the weak sunlight. Behind her, Sarah was nursing Race again. Jack was pulling on his boots, getting ready to dig out the car. I should be able to get to the highway by noon, he said. I'll call a tow truck for the ditch. We'll be out of your hair by this afternoon. Something twisted in Evelyn's chest. There's no rush. You've done enough, Mrs. Carter. More than enough. Evelyn. Call me Evelyn. He paused, one boot half-laced. Evelyn, then. A small smile crossed his face. Thank you. For everything. Sarah stood up carefully, Grace cradled against her shoulder. She walked over to Evelyn and pressed something into her palm. A bracelet. Woven leather and silver beads. I made this for Grace, Sarah said softly, but I want you to have it, so she'll always be with you. Evelyn turned the bracelet over in her hand. Simple, beautiful, made with love. I can't take this. Please, Sarah's eyes glistened. Please. It's the only thing I have to give you, and it's not nearly enough. Evelyn slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It fit perfectly. I'll wear it every day, she promised. Every single day. Jack finished lacing his boots and stood up. For a moment, he just looked at Evelyn, this 71-year-old widow, in her worn cardigan and wool socks, with silver hair pinned back in a neat bun. Then he crossed the room and wrapped her in a hug. Evelyn stiffened. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had hugged her. But then something in her relaxed, and she hugged him back. Thank you, he said into her ear, for seeing past the jacket, for giving us a chance, for saving my little girl. And thank you for knocking, she whispered back. I needed someone to save too. He pulled back, his eyes wet. I'll be back, Evelyn. That's not an empty promise. Hell's Angels don't forget. I'll be back for you. She watched them load up Jack carrying the bags, Sarah bundling, Grace in the fresh blankets, their breath fogging in the crisp morning air. At the end of her driveway, Jack turned back one last time. He raised his hand. Evelyn raised hers. Then they were gone, swallowed by the bright, white world. The house felt emptier than it had in 2 years. Evelyn stood in the middle of her living room, the bracelet warm against her wrist, and listened to the silence. The fire had burned down to embers. The soup pot still sat on the stove. Sarah's wet coat hung over a chair to dry. She should have felt relieved. The strangers were gone. The storm was over. Life could go back to normal, but normal felt hollow now. She walked to the mantelpiece and picked up Walter's photograph. His smile looked different somehow, warmer. I did something right, didn't I? She whispered. I finally did something right. The house didn't answer. It never did. But for the first time in 2 years, the silence didn't feel quite so heavy. She didn't know that Derek was already on his way. Didn't know about the papers in his briefcase, the demands he was preparing, the threats his wife Nicole had been coaching him to make. She didn't know that in exactly 1 week, the sound of 30 Harley-Davidsons would shake her windows and change everything. All she knew, standing there in the pale morning light, with her dead husband's photograph in her hands and a stranger's bracelet on her wrist, was that something had shifted. Something had begun. And there was no going back now. The week that followed felt like a dream Evelyn couldn't quite wake from. She found herself touching the bracelet on her wrist a dozen times a day, running her fingers over the woven leather and silver beads like a rosary. Each time she half expected it to vanish, proof that the whole night had been nothing but a fever dream brought on by loneliness and too much time alone. But the bracelet stayed, and so did the memories. On the third day her phone rang. Evelyn stared at it. The phone almost never rang anymore. Bill collectors occasionally. Telemarketers selling things she didn't need. Once in a while, someone from church checking to make sure she was still alive. She picked it up. Hello. Evelyn, it's Jack. Jack Morrison. Her heart jumped. Jack, is everything all right? Is Grace? She's perfect, better than perfect. Doctor says she's completely healthy, no lasting effects from the cold. His voice cracked slightly. Because of you. Because you opened that door. Evelyn sank into the chair by the phone, her legs suddenly weak. I'm so glad. I've been thinking about her. About all of you. That's actually why I'm calling. Jack paused. Sarah and I want to come see you, if that's okay. We want to thank you properly. You don't need to thank me. I told you that. I know what you told me, but I'm not asking permission, Evelyn. I'm asking if Saturday works. She laughed a real laugh, the first one in months. Saturday works. We'll bring lunch. And Grace. She's been asking for you. She's 6 weeks old, Jack. She can't ask her anything. You'd be surprised. Every time she fusses, Sarah says, you want to go see Grandma Evelyn? And she calms right down. He paused. Sarah started calling you that. Grandma Evelyn, I hope that's okay. The words hit Evelyn like a wave. Grandma, she hadn't been called that in 7 years. Not since those 3 precious days with her grandson. That's more than okay, she whispered. That's everything. Saturday arrived cold but clear. Evelyn woke at dawn and couldn't go back to sleep. She cleaned the house twice, rearranged the furniture in the living room, then rearranged it back. She baked a coffee cake using her mother's recipe, the one she hadn't made since Walter's funeral. At 11:30, she heard the rumble of a motorcycle. Her heart seized. Just one motorcycle, not a car, not safety. She went to the window. Jack pulled into her driveway on a massive Harley-Davidson Chrome gleaming in the pale winter sun. Behind him, arms wrapped tight around his waist, sat Sarah. And strapped to Sarah's chest in some kind of special carrier was a bundle of pink blankets. Grace. Evelyn was out the door before she could think, her slippers crunching in the snow. You brought her on a motorcycle. The words came out sharper than she intended. In this weather, are you insane? Jack killed the engine and grinned. Relax, Grandma. We've got heated gear. Baby's warmer than you are right now. Sarah climbed off the bike, already unstrapping Grace from the carrier. He's telling the truth. This suit costs more than our rent. She's basically in a portable incubator. Evelyn hurried forward, her hands reaching for the baby before her brain caught up. Let me see her. Let me see. Sarah placed Grace in her arms, the weight, the warmth. The tiny face peering up at her with bright, curious eyes. Hello, sweet girl, Evelyn breathed. Hello, my darling. Do you remember me? Grace made a sound, not quite a coo, not quite a laugh, but something in between. Her tiny hand reached up and grabbed Evelyn's finger and held on. She remembers, Sarah said softly. I told you she would. They went inside and Evelyn refused to give the baby back. She held Grace while they ate lunch, held her while they drank coffee, held her while Jack told her about the garage and Sarah talked about maybe going back to nursing school. It felt like having a family again. A real family, the kind she had stopped believing in. Evelyn, Jack said, finally setting down his coffee cup. There's something I need to tell you. The tone of his voice made her look up. What is it? After we left your place, I made some calls, asked around about you. He held up a hand before she could speak. Not in a creepy way. I just wanted to know more about the woman who saved my daughter's life. Evelyn's stomach tightened. And what did you find? I found out about your son. The words hung in the air like smoke. Derek, Evelyn said flatly. Yeah, Derek. Jack leaned forward. I heard about the farm, about the land developers, about his wife pushing you to sell. His eyes hardened. I heard he's been telling people around town that you're losing your mind, that you can't take care of yourself anymore. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. He said that to multiple people, including a lawyer who specializes in... Jack stopped himself. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought this up. Not today. No, Evelyn's voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. Tell me, what kind of lawyer? Jack and Sarah exchanged a glance. Elder law, Sarah said quietly. Specifically competency hearings. The kind where family members try to get power of attorney over elderly relatives. The room seemed to tilt. Evelyn gripped Grace tighter, and the baby made a small noise of protest. He's trying to have me declared incompetent. I don't know for sure, but the lawyer he's been talking to, that's his specialty, taking control away from older people so their families can manage their assets. Evelyn thought about Derek, her baby boy, the child she'd rocked to sleep, nursed through fevers, cheered at Little League games. The young man who'd stood beside her at Walter's funeral and promised he'd always be there for her. That was the last promise he'd kept. His wife, Evelyn said slowly. Nicole, she's behind this. Maybe, probably, but Derek's a grown man. He's making his own choices. You don't know him. You don't know what he used to be like. You're right, I don't. Jack's voice softened. But I know what he's like now. And Evelyn, I'm worried about you. Sarah reached over and put her hand on Evelyn's arm. We're not trying to scare you, but you need to know what's happening. You need to be prepared. Prepared for what? For whatever comes next. The afternoon light was fading. Grace had fallen asleep in Evelyn's arms, her tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Can I ask you something, Evelyn said, about your club, about the Hells Angels? Jack nodded. Anything. You said I'm under your protection now. What does that actually mean? What would happen if, she stopped, swallowed. What would happen if Derek tried something? Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured. Careful. There's a man in our chapter. Razor. He's the president. Biggest guy you've ever seen, 6'6", 300 pounds, tattoos everywhere. Looks like he could tear a phone book in half with his teeth. I remember. You told me about him. The one who saved your life. Yeah, that's him. Jack paused. Before he joined the Angels, Razor was a family court judge. 22 years on the bench. Saw every kind of case you can imagine. Custody battles, abuse cases, elder exploitation. His eyes met hers. He retired early because the system broke him. Saw too many people get hurt by the very laws that were supposed to protect them. Evelyn frowned. Why are you telling me this? Because if your son tries to have you declared incompetent, Razor will know exactly what to do. He knows every trick, every loophole, every dirty tactic lawyers use. And he knows how to fight back. A biker gang is going to fight my legal battles. We're not a gang, we're a club, a family. Jack leaned forward, and you're part of that family now, whether you like it or not. Sarah spoke up. He's not exaggerating, Evelyn. When Jack was at his lowest, Razor didn't just save his life, he gave him a reason to keep living. He does that for people. It's who he is. Evelyn looked down at Grace, still sleeping peacefully in her arms. Such a small thing, so fragile, so completely dependent on the people who loved her. Why, she asked, why did you care so much about a stranger you met in a snowstorm? Jack smiled. Because you're not a stranger anymore. You stopped being a stranger the second you opened that door. They stayed until dark. When they finally left, Evelyn stood on her porch and watched the motorcycle disappear down the road, its single taillight growing smaller and smaller until it vanished into the night. The house felt empty again, but differently empty, like a room that's waiting for guests instead of one that's been abandoned. She went back inside and sat in Walter's chair by the window. The bracelet caught the light from the dying fire. I think I might be okay, she said to the empty room. For the first time in 2 years, I think I might actually be okay. The phone rang. Evelyn jumped. It was almost 8 o'clock. No one called at 8 o'clock. She picked up the receiver. Hello, Adley. Mom. One word, her son's voice. Flat. Cold. Derek. She gripped the phone tighter. It's been 6 months. I thought, I'm coming to see you tomorrow. We need to talk. Of course, I'd love to see you. I'll make dinner we can. This isn't a social visit. His voice cut through her words like a blade. I'm bringing Nicole and some papers that need your signature. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. What kind of papers? We'll discuss it tomorrow. Be there at noon. Derek, wait. Please, just tell me what's going on. Silence. Then you'll find out tomorrow. The line went dead. Evelyn stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to the dial tone. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the receiver. Papers that need your signature. Elder law, competency hearings, taking control. She hung up the phone and walked to the window. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Somewhere out there, Jack and Sarah were riding home with Grace strapped safely between them. Somewhere out there, a man named Razor was doing whatever retired judges turned bikers do on Saturday nights. And somewhere much closer, her own son was preparing to take everything she had left. Evelyn touched the bracelet on her wrist. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Everything changes tomorrow." She didn't sleep that night. She sat in Walter's chair and watched the darkness slowly turn to gray, her mind racing through memories of Derek as a child. Derek at 5 crying because he'd accidentally stepped on a butterfly. Derek at 10 saving his allowance for months to buy her a birthday present. Derek at 20 dancing with her at his wedding, whispering in her ear, "You'll always be my best girl, Mom, no matter what." What had happened to that boy? When had he turned into this cold stranger who talked about papers and signatures and visits that weren't social Nicole? It had to be Nicole. Evelyn had never trusted her daughter-in-law. From the first dinner, something had felt wrong. The way Nicole's eyes had swept over the farmhouse calculating. The questions about the land, the acreage, the property values. The barely concealed disappointment when she learned that Walter was still healthy and showed no signs of dying anytime soon. And then Walter had died, and everything had changed. The first visit after the funeral, Nicole had brought a real estate agent. "Just to get an appraisal," she'd said, "just so you know your options." The second visit, she'd brought brochures for assisted living facilities. "Just in case," she'd said, "just so you're prepared." The third visit, she'd brought Derek, and Derek had said things Evelyn never thought she'd hear from her own child. "You're getting old, Mom. You can't take care of this place by yourself. It's time to be realistic. Dad would have wanted you to be comfortable, a nice facility, people to take care of you. The land is worth over $1 million. You're sitting on a fortune while we're struggling to pay bills." Evelyn had thrown them out that day. Literally. She'd stood up, walked to the door, opened it, and pointed at the driveway. "Get out of my house, both of you, and don't come back until you remember who raised you." That was 6 months ago. Derek hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't sent so much as a Christmas card until now. At 11:30, Evelyn heard a car pull into the driveway. She stood at the window and watched Derek step out of a sleek black SUV. Nicole's car far too expensive for a man who claimed to be struggling with bills. He was wearing a suit, to visit his own mother. Nicole emerged from the passenger side, blonde hair, perfectly styled designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, even though the sky was overcast. She was carrying a briefcase. A briefcase. Evelyn's hands clenched at her sides. The doorbell rang. They didn't just walk in anymore. They rang the bell like strangers. She took a breath, then another. Then she walked to the door and opened it. "Derek, Nicole, please come in." Derek brushed past her without a hug, without a kiss, without even meeting her eyes. Nicole followed her heels clicking on the wooden floor. "Nice to see you're still keeping the place up," Nicole said, her eyes scanning the room. "Though I noticed the roof is looking a little worn. That'll need to be fixed before any sale." "There's not going to be a sale," Evelyn said quietly. Nicole smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see." They sat in the living room, Derek and Nicole on the couch, Evelyn in Walter's chair. The briefcase sat between them like a bomb waiting to go off. "Mom," Derek said, finally looking at her, "we need to talk about your future." "My future is fine." "Is it?" He leaned forward. "You're 71 years old. You're living alone in a house that's falling apart. You almost died in that blizzard last week." "I didn't almost die. I was perfectly fine. The power was out for 3 days. What if something had happened? What if you'd fallen? What if you had had a heart attack like Dad?" His voice rose. "There would have been no one here to help you. You would have died alone in this house, and we wouldn't have known for days." Evelyn felt the words hit her like physical blows. "I wasn't alone that night." Derek frowned. "What do you mean? I had guests. A family needed shelter from the storm. I helped them." Nicole's eyebrows shot up. "You let strangers into your house in the middle of a blizzard at your age. They had a baby, a 6-week-old girl who was freezing to death. Was I supposed to let her die on my doorstep?" "You were supposed to call 911, Derek snapped. "You were supposed to let professionals handle it, not invite God knows who into your home." 911 was down. The phone lines were dead. The roads were impassable. Evelyn's voice hardened. "And for your information, I saved that baby's life. She's alive today because I opened my door." Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. Nicole's eyes had narrowed. What kind of family? Nicole asked slowly. Who were these people? Evelyn hesitated. She knew what was coming, but she refused to be ashamed. The father is a member of a motorcycle club, the Hells Angels. Silence. Dead silence. Then Derek exploded. You let Hells Angels into your house. Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what those people are? They're criminals, Mom. Drug dealers. They've probably already cased the place and they're coming back to rob you blind. That's not true. How would you know you're a 71-year-old woman who thinks everyone is good because that's what you want to believe? You have no idea what the real world is like. I know more than you think. Evelyn's voice was ice. I know that 5 houses turned that family away. I know that one man pointed a shotgun at a father holding his freezing baby. I know that people like you, people who judge others by their jackets and their tattoos, almost let an innocent child die. People like me, Derek laughed bitterly. I'm trying to protect you, Mom. I'm trying to keep you safe, and you're making it impossible. Nicole reached for the briefcase. Derek, maybe we should... Not yet. He held up a hand. Mom, I didn't want it to come to this, but you're not thinking clearly. You're making dangerous decisions, and someone has to step in before you get yourself killed. Evelyn's heart began to pound. What are you saying? Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. I'm saying that Nicole and I have consulted with a lawyer, a specialist in elder law. There it was, the word she'd been dreading. You're trying to have me declared incompetent. I'm trying to get you the help you need. Derek's voice was pleading now, almost desperate. If you sign these papers, you can stay in the house. You can keep living here. We'll just have power of attorney to manage your finances and your medical decisions. We'll take care of everything. And if I don't sign, Derek's jaw tightened, then we'll have to pursue other options. Court, Evelyn said flatly. You'll take me to court. If that's what it takes to keep you safe, then yes. Evelyn looked at her son, really looked at him. The same blue eyes as Walter, the same stubborn set to his jaw. But the warmth was gone. The kindness was gone. All she saw was a stranger wearing her baby boy's face. You know what your father said to me the night before he died? Derek flinched. Mom, don't. He said, whatever happens, don't let Derek sell the farm. Promise me, Evie, this land has been in my family for 4 generations. Don't let it end with us. She stood up, her legs steady, her voice strong. I made that promise, and I intend to keep it. Dad didn't know what he was saying. He was sick. He was clearer that night than he'd been in months. Evelyn walked to the door and opened it. I'm not signing anything. I'm not giving up my home, and I'm not going to stand here and let my own son treat me like a problem to be solved. Nicole stood up, her face flushed with anger. You're making a mistake, Evelyn. A big one. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Derek rose slowly, the paper still clutched in his hand. This isn't over, Mom. No, I don't suppose it is. He walked to the door, then stopped. For just a moment, something flickered across his face, something that looked almost like pain. I'm doing this because I love you. Evelyn met his eyes. No, Derek. You're doing this because she told you to. She nodded toward Nicole, who was already halfway to the car. Derek's face hardened. Whatever softness had been there disappeared. You have 1 week to change your mind. After that, we filed a petition. He walked out without looking back. Evelyn stood in the doorway watching the SUV pull away. Her whole body was trembling. Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst. But she didn't cry. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. When the car disappeared around the corner, she closed the door and leaned against it, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. 1 week. She had 1 week before her own son tried to take everything from her. She walked to the phone and picked it up with shaking hands. She didn't know Jack's number by heart. They'd only exchanged it once briefly as he was leaving. But she'd written it on a piece of paper and stuck it to the refrigerator, just in case. She dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello. Jack, her voice broke. It's Evelyn. I need help. What happened? My son was just here. He's trying to take the farm. He's trying to have me declared incompetent. The tears finally came streaming down her face. I don't know what to do. I don't have anyone. I don't... Evelyn, Jack's voice cut through her panic, calm and steady. Evelyn, listen to me. Are you listening? Yes. I told you that you're family now. I told you we'd be there when you needed us. Did you think I was lying? No, but then stop talking and start trusting. She heard movement on his end of the line, voices in the background. I'm making some calls. Tomorrow morning you're going to have visitors. A lot of them. Jack, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm telling. His voice softened. You saved my daughter's life, Evelyn. You gave me back my family. Now let me return the favor. Evelyn closed her eyes. The tears were still falling, but something else was building in her chest. Something that felt almost like hope. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over. A pause. Get some sleep tonight, or try to. Tomorrow, everything changes. The line went dead. Evelyn hung up the phone and sank into Walter's chair. Through the window, she could see the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Tomorrow, the Hell's Angels would come, and nothing would ever be the same. Evelyn woke to thunder, not the thunder of storms, something different, something deeper. A low rolling growl that shook the windows and rattled the dishes in her cupboards. She sat up in Walter's chair, disoriented. She'd fallen asleep there again, the phone still clutched in her hand. Morning light streamed through the frost-covered windows. The thunder grew louder. Evelyn stood on shaking legs and walked to the front door. Her hand trembled as she pulled back the curtain. Her heart stopped. Motorcycles, dozens of them, pouring down her driveway like a river of chrome and leather. The roar was deafening now, vibrating through the floorboards, through her bones, through her very soul. She counted them as they came. 10, 15, 20, 25. 30 motorcycles pulled into her yard and formed a perfect semicircle around her front porch. The engines cut off one by one, and the sudden silence was almost as overwhelming as the noise had been. Evelyn opened the door. Jack was the first off his bike. He pulled off his helmet and jogged up the porch steps, his face tight with concern. You okay? Did you sleep at all? Not really, her voice came out as a whisper. Jack, there's so many of them. I told you, family takes care of family. He turned and gestured toward the assembled riders. Evelyn, I want you to meet the Montana chapter of the Hells Angels. One by one, they climbed off their bikes. Men and women, young and old. Some had gray beards and weathered faces. Others looked barely out of their 20s. They wore leather jackets covered in patches, bandanas, boots caked with road dust. And every single one of them was looking at her. A massive figure pushed through the crowd. He was easily the biggest man Evelyn had ever seen, 6 feet 6 inches of solid muscle arms covered in tattoos, a beard that reached his chest. His leather vest bore more patches than any of the others. Mrs. Carter. His voice was surprisingly soft, gentle even. I'm Razor. Jack's told me a lot about you. Evelyn had to tilt her head back to look at his face. You're the judge. Razor's lips twitched. Former judge. These days I just ride and try to help where I can. He reached out a hand the size of a dinner plate. It's an honor to meet the woman who saved our brother's little girl. Evelyn took his hand. His grip was careful, controlled. I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have. No. Razor shook his head. Not anyone. 5 houses turned them away. 5 people looked at a dying baby and closed their doors. You're the one who didn't. His eyes held hers. That makes you special whether you believe it or not. Sarah appeared at Evelyn's elbow, Grace bundled in her arms. How are you holding up? I don't know. Evelyn touched the bracelet on her wrist. I didn't expect all this. I just thought maybe Jack would come by and what, hold your hand while your son takes everything? Sarah's voice was fierce. That's not how this works. You're one of us now, and we don't abandon our own. The next hour was a blur. The bikers spread out across her property like a well-organized army. Some went to work on her fence, which had been sagging for months. Others started on the roof, pulling up damaged shingles and replacing them with new ones they brought in a trailer. A group of women took over her kitchen, making coffee and sandwiches for the workers. Evelyn stood in the middle of it all, overwhelmed. Sit down before you fall down. Razor guided her to a chair on the porch. You've had a hell of a week. Let us handle things for a while. I can't just sit here while everyone else works. Sure you can. It's called accepting help. He lowered himself onto the porch step beside her, his massive frame creaking the wood. Jack told me about your son, about the papers he wants you to sign. Evelyn's stomach clenched. Did he tell you I only have a week? He told me that. Razor pulled a folded document from inside his jacket. I had my lawyer friend take a look at the standard petition for incompetency. Want to know what I found? Tell me. It's bullshit. Razor's voice was flat. Pure legal intimidation. They're counting on you being scared and alone. Counting on you signing away your rights just to make the pressure stop. He unfolded the document. But here's the thing: to actually declare someone incompetent, they need evidence. Medical evaluations. Witness testimony. A judge who agrees that you can't make your own decisions. And if they get all that, they won't. Razor met her eyes. I spent 22 years watching families tear each other apart in my courtroom. I've seen every dirty trick in the book, and I've also seen what happens when someone fights back. He put a heavy hand on her shoulder. You're going to fight back, Evelyn, and you're not going to be alone. A shout came from the driveway. Evelyn looked up. A black SUV was pulling in. Nicole's SUV. Oh no, Evelyn breathed. They're early. Jack said they weren't supposed to come until... Stay here. Razor stood, and suddenly he didn't look gentle anymore. He looked like exactly what he was, a 6'6" wall of muscle and leather with eyes like cold steel. Let me handle this. Derek stepped out of the SUV first. He was wearing another suit, his face already twisted into a scowl. Nicole emerged from the passenger side, her designer sunglasses firmly in place. They both stopped dead when they saw the motorcycles. What the hell is this? Derek's voice carried across the yard. Mom, what's going on? Evelyn started to stand, but Sarah's hand on her shoulder held her in place. Wait, let them come to you. Derek picked his way through the parked bikes, his face getting redder with each step. Nicole followed her heels, sinking into the soft ground. Mom, what are these people doing here? Are these the criminals you told me about? The ones from the storm. Razor stepped into Derek's path. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, arms crossed, blocking the way to the porch. Derek stopped. His face went pale. Who are you? Name's Razor. I'm a friend of your mother's. My mother doesn't have friends named Razor. My mother doesn't associate with... Derek's voice cracked. Get out of my way. Razor didn't move. Not until we have a conversation. I'm not having a conversation with you. I'm here to see my mother. Your mother's right there. Razor nodded toward the porch. But before you talk to her, you're going to listen to me. Like hell I am. Derek tried to push past him. Razor's hand shot out and caught Derek's arm. The grip wasn't violent, but it was immovable. Derek might as well have been trying to push through a brick wall. I said listen. Razor's voice dropped. I spent 22 years as a family court judge. I've seen 1,000 sons and daughters try to do exactly what you're doing right now. Take control of elderly parents, sell their property, stick them in homes and forget about them. His eyes bored into Derek's. It never ends well. Not for the parents, not for the kids, not for anyone. Derek yanked his arm free, his face flushed with anger and fear. You don't know anything about my family. I know enough. I know you haven't called your mother in 6 months. I know you only showed up when you wanted something. I know you're married to a woman who sees your mother as an ATM machine. Razor glanced at Nicole, who had frozen several feet away. How much did you spend on that SUV? 70 grand, 80. And you're telling your mother she needs to sell her home because you're struggling. Nicole's face went white. How dare you? I dare because someone has to. Razor turned back to Derek. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go up on that porch and talk to your mother. Really talk. Not threaten, not demand. Talk. And then you're going to leave and you're going to think very carefully about your next move. Or what? Razor smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Or you're going to find out what happens when the Hells Angels decide someone is threatening one of their own. Derek's face cycled through emotions, fear, anger, defiance, and finally something that looked almost like desperation. She's my mother. You can't keep me from her. I'm not keeping you from anything. I'm giving you advice. Razor stepped aside. Go talk to her. But remember, we'll be watching. And we don't forget. Derek walked up the porch steps like a man approaching his own execution. Nicole stayed by the SUV, her arms crossed her face, a mask of fury. Mom! Derek stopped in front of Evelyn's chair. What is this? What have you gotten yourself into? I haven't gotten into anything. Evelyn's voice was steady. These people are my friends. They came to help me. Help you with what? The roof? Derek laughed bitterly. You could pay for a new roof 10 times over if you just sold. I'm not selling. Mom, I'm not selling, Derek. Evelyn stood up and suddenly she didn't feel old anymore. She felt strong, certain. This land belonged to your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Your father worked this soil his entire life. And you want me to hand it over to some developer so Nicole can buy another car? That's not fair. We have bills. Everyone has bills. That doesn't give you the right to steal from your mother. The word hit Derek like a slap. Steal? I'm not stealing anything. I'm trying to help you. Are you? Evelyn stepped closer. Then why did you hire a lawyer who specializes in taking control away from elderly people? Why did you tell everyone in town that I'm losing my mind? Why did you come here with papers demanding I sign over my rights? Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Who told you? It doesn't matter who told me. What matters is that it's true. Evelyn's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. I held you in my arms the day you were born. I walked the floor with you when you had colic. I sat by your bed when you had chickenpox. I cheered at every game, every recital, every graduation. And this is how you repay me. Mom, please. I'm not finished. Her voice cracked. When your father died, I thought you'd be there for me. I thought we'd grieve together, support each other. Instead, you blamed me. You said I killed him by not calling fast enough. Derek flinched. I never said. You did. Maybe not in those exact words, but you said it. Every time you looked at me with those cold eyes. Every time you let Nicole talk about managing my assets. Every time you chose her over me. The tears finally fell streaming down her weathered cheeks. I lost my husband, and then I lost my son. And now you want to take my home too. Derek stood frozen. Something was shifting in his face, cracks forming in the mask he'd been wearing. Mom, He swallowed. I didn't mean for it to be like this. Then why is it like this? He stopped. His hands were shaking. Because I'm angry. I'm so angry and I don't know where to put it. Angry at who? At Dad. The words burst out of him like water from a broken dam. For dying, for leaving us, for leaving me. His voice broke. I was supposed to have more time. We were supposed to go fishing that summer. He promised we'd finally take that trip to Alaska. And then Derek's legs gave out. He dropped onto the porch steps, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Evelyn stared at her son, her baby boy, crying on her porch like he hadn't cried since he was 10 years old. She sat down beside him. I know, she said softly. I'm angry too. You are every single day. She put her arm around him, something she hadn't done in years. I'm angry that he left me alone. I'm angry that he didn't take better care of himself. I'm angry that the last words I said to him were, don't forget to pick up milk. Her voice trembled. I'm angry that I didn't get to say goodbye. Derek leaned into her shoulder. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I know you are. I never should have listened to Nicole. I never should have let her. He stopped, took a breath. She's been in my ear for 2 years, telling me you're a burden, telling me the money would solve all our problems. And I believed her because it was easier than feeling this. Feeling what? Lost. He looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. Without Dad, I don't know who I am anymore. He was my anchor. And when he died, I just started drifting. Evelyn thought about Jack, about the story he'd told her, the gun in his hand, the finger on the trigger, the knock on the door that saved his life. Derek, she said slowly, have you talked to anyone, a professional, like a therapist? He laughed bitterly. Nicole thinks therapy is for weak people. Nicole thinks a lot of things that aren't true. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then I've been having nightmares about Dad, about finding him on the floor. I see it every time I close my eyes. Oh, sweetheart. I didn't want to tell you because I thought you'd think I was weak. Derek, she cupped his face in her hands the way she used to when he was small. Grief isn't weakness. Asking for help isn't weakness. You know what's weak? Running from your pain and taking it out on the people who love you. He closed his eyes. I've been so stupid. Yes, you have. She smiled gently. But you're still my son, and it's not too late to fix this. Nicole's voice cut through the moment like broken glass. Derek, what are you doing? Get up. Derek stiffened. He pulled back from Evelyn, his face shuddering. Derek. Nicole stormed across the yard, her heels forgotten, her careful composure shattered. We came here to get her signature, not to have some pathetic family reunion. Get up and finish what we started. Derek stood slowly. He looked at Nicole, then at Evelyn, then at the dozens of bikers who had stopped their work to watch. No. Nicole blinked. What? I said no. Derek's voice was quiet but firm. We're not doing this, Nicole. Not anymore. Have you lost your mind? We have a plan. I don't care about the plan. He turned to face her fully. I care about my mother, and I've spent 2 years letting you convince me that she was the enemy. He shook his head. She's not the enemy. She's my mom, and I'm done treating her like a problem to be solved. Nicole's face contorted with rage. If you think I'm going to let you throw away $1 million because you got emotional, it's not your $1 million. It was never your $1 million. Derek pulled out his phone. I'm calling a cab. You can wait for it by the road. Derek. By the road, Nicole. His voice hardened. And when I get home, we're going to have a very different conversation than the one you are expecting. Nicole looked around at the bikers, at Evelyn, at the husband she no longer recognized. For a moment, it seemed like she might argue, might fight, might cause a scene. Then her eyes met Razor's. He smiled at her, that same cold, knowing smile. Nicole turned and walked toward the road without another word. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Jack let out a low whistle. Well, didn't see that coming. Derek turned to face the assembled bikers. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. I owe all of you an apology for what I was planning to do, for what I almost did. Razor stepped forward. You don't owe us anything. You owe your mother. You're right. Derek turned back to Evelyn. Mom, I know I can't fix this overnight. I know I've got a lot to make up for. But if you'll let me, I'd like to try. Evelyn looked at her son, really looked at him, and for the first time in 2 years, she saw the boy she'd raised, the boy who cried over butterflies, the boy who saved his allowance for birthday presents, the boy who danced with her at his wedding and called her his best girl. I'd like that too, she said softly. Derek pulled her into a hug, a real hug, the kind they hadn't shared since Walter's funeral. And Evelyn held her son and let herself believe, just for a moment, that everything might actually be okay. Around them, the Hells Angels went back to work. The hammering resumed, the conversations picked up, and somewhere in the distance, a cab pulled up to collect a woman who had just lost everything she'd been scheming for. Sarah appeared at Evelyn's side, Grace cooing in her arms. You okay? Evelyn wiped her eyes. I think so. For the first time in a long time, I think I actually might be. Jack joined them, his arm around Sarah's waist. Told you, Evelyn. Family takes care of family. Yes. She looked at her son, at the bikers, at the baby who had brought them all together. I'm beginning to understand that. Razor's voice boomed across the yard. All right, everyone. We've got a roof to finish and a fence to fix. Let's move. The work continued. And Evelyn stood on her porch, surrounded by strangers who had become family, watching her son take his first real steps back toward the person he was meant to be. The bracelet on her wrist caught the afternoon light, and somewhere she was certain Walter was smiling. 3 weeks passed like a dream Evelyn didn't want to wake from. Derek came by every Sunday. At first, the visits were awkward, stilted conversations, long silences, both of them dancing around the years of pain between them. But slowly, week by week, something began to heal. He told her about the divorce. Nicole hadn't taken it well. She'd hired her own lawyer, demanded half of everything, made threats about exposing his unstable behavior. But Derek had stood firm. She can have the house, he said one evening, sitting across from Evelyn at the kitchen table. She can have the car, the furniture, whatever she wants. I don't care anymore. That's a lot to give up. It's just stuff, Mom. He looked around the farmhouse at the worn wallpaper, the creaky floors, the photographs on the mantelpiece. This is what matters. Family, history, the things money can't buy. Evelyn reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Your father would be proud of you. Derek's eyes glistened. You think so? I know so. The Hells Angels became a regular presence too. Jack and Sarah came by at least twice a week and always bringing Grace, always staying for dinner. Other members dropped in randomly. Razor with his booming laugh, a woman named Maggie who taught Evelyn how to make the best apple pie she'd ever tasted, a quiet veteran named Tommy who spent hours fixing everything in the house that had been broken for years. For the first time since Walter's death, the farmhouse felt alive again. But Evelyn should have known it couldn't last. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Evelyn was in the kitchen making coffee when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. Hello, Mrs. Carter, a woman's voice. Official, cold. This is Patricia Hendricks from the Montana Adult Protective Services. I'm calling regarding a complaint filed against you. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. A complaint? What kind of complaint? We've received a report alleging that you may be a victim of elder abuse and financial exploitation. Specifically that you're being manipulated by members of a motorcycle gang who have gained access to your property and assets. The words hit her like physical blows. That's not true. That's completely... Ma'am, I understand this may be upsetting, but we're required to investigate all complaints. I'll be visiting your home tomorrow at 10 a.m. to conduct an assessment. A pause. I'd recommend having a family member present. And ma'am, it would be best if the individuals mentioned in the complaint were not on the property during my visit. The line went dead. Evelyn stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely set it down. Nicole, it had to be Nicole. She called Jack immediately. Slow down. His voice was calm, steady. Tell me exactly what she said. Evelyn repeated the conversation, her voice cracking with each word. She filed a complaint, Jack. She's trying to say you're exploiting me, that you're taking advantage of a vulnerable elderly woman. That's ridiculous. We've done nothing but help you. I know that, you know that, but what if they believe her? What if they, her voice broke. What if they take me away from my home? That's not going to happen, and Steele entered Jack's voice. I'm calling Razor. We'll figure this out. She said you can't be here. When the investigator comes, she said, I heard what she said. A long pause. Evelyn, do you trust me? Yes, of course I do. Then trust me now. Don't panic. Don't do anything until we've talked to Razor. He knows how these things work. He'll know what to do. An hour later, Razor's motorcycle roared into her driveway. He came inside without knocking. He'd earned that right and sat down across from her at the kitchen table. His massive frame seemed to fill the entire room. Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. Evelyn told him. The phone call. The accusation. The investigator coming tomorrow. Razor listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back and crossed his arms. Nicole filed the complaint. That's what I assumed. No, I know she did. I made some calls. His jaw tightened. She filed it the day after Derek served her with divorce papers. Revenge. Pure and simple. Can she do that? File a false complaint? Anyone can file a complaint. That's how the system works, better to investigate 10 false reports than miss one real case of abuse. Razor's eyes met hers. The question is whether the investigator will see through the bullshit. And if she doesn't, then we have a problem. He leaned forward. Evelyn, I need you to understand something. If this investigator decides you're being exploited, she can recommend a lot of things. Mandatory wellness checks. Supervised contact with suspicious individuals. In extreme cases, emergency guardianship. Guardianship, you mean? I mean someone else making decisions for you about your money, your property, your medical care, everything. His voice hardened. It's exactly what Derek was trying to do, just through a different door. Evelyn felt the room spin. What do I do? You fight, and you don't fight alone. Razor pulled out his phone. I'm calling in some favors. By tomorrow morning, you're going to have a lawyer, a good one. And you're going to have documentation of everything we've done for you. Every repair, every meal, every visit, all of it on paper, all of it proving that we're your friends, not your exploiters. What about you? The investigator said, I know what she said, and I'll respect that. I won't be here when she comes. His eyes blazed. But I'll be watching. And if she tries anything underhanded, anything at all, she's going to find out that the Hells Angels protect their own. The lawyer arrived at 8 the next morning. Her name was Catherine Park, mid-40s, sharp eyes, sharper suit. She shook Evelyn's hand with a grip that meant business. Razor briefed me on the situation. I've handled dozens of these cases. She set a thick folder on the kitchen table. The good news is that everything Nicole's claiming is demonstrably false. The bad news is that investigators have a lot of discretion, and some of them have biases. Biases against what? Against motorcycle clubs, against unconventional relationships, against anything that doesn't fit their idea of what a normal support system looks like. Catherine met her eyes. We need to be prepared for the possibility that this investigator already has her mind made up. Derek arrived at 9. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw that looked like he'd slept in them. But he came. That was what mattered. Mom. He hugged her tight. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. No, it isn't. If I hadn't married her, if I hadn't let things get this far. Derek, Evelyn pulled back and looked him in the eye. You're here now. That's what matters. Catherine cleared her throat. Mr. Carter, I understand you and your wife are in the middle of divorce proceedings. Yes, she's contesting everything, making it as difficult as possible. And is it possible she filed this complaint as retaliation? Derek's face darkened. It's not just possible, it's certain. She told me she would destroy everything I cared about if I went through with the divorce. He paused. Those were her exact words. Destroy everything. Catherine made a note. That's useful. Can you testify to that if necessary? I'll do whatever it takes. At exactly 10 o'clock, a gray sedan pulled into the driveway. Patricia Hendricks was younger than Evelyn expected, maybe early 30s, with close-cropped hair and a clipboard clutched against her chest. She wore the careful expression of someone who'd been trained not to show emotion. Mrs. Carter, I'm Patricia Hendricks. May I come in? Of course. Evelyn stepped aside. This is my attorney, Catherine Park, and my son, Derek. Patricia's eyes flickered to Catherine. Something shifted in her expression, surprise maybe, or concern. I wasn't aware you'd retained legal counsel. Given the seriousness of the allegations, I thought it was appropriate. Evelyn's voice was steady. Please sit down. Can I offer you some coffee? No, thank you. Patricia settled into a chair, her clipboard balanced on her knee. Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with certain individuals, specifically members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Of course. What would you like to know? How did you meet these individuals? Evelyn told her. The storm, the family on her doorstep, the baby turning blue, every detail exactly as it happened. Patricia's face remained neutral. And since that night, how often have these individuals visited your property? Regularly, several times a week. And during these visits, have they asked you for money? Access to your bank accounts? Any kind of financial assistance? Never. In fact, they've refused to accept anything from me. Evelyn leaned forward. They've done nothing but help. They fix my roof, my fence, my kitchen cabinets. They bring groceries, they bring meals. They bring their children and grandchildren to visit. Patricia made notes without looking up. The complainant alleges that these individuals have isolated you from your family and are positioning themselves to gain control of your assets. The complainant, Derek interrupted, is my soon-to-be ex-wife. She filed this report because I'm divorcing her, and she's trying to hurt my mother to get back at me. Patricia's pen stopped moving. Mr. Carter, you're aware that making false statements to a state investigator is a crime. I'm aware, and I'm telling you the truth. Derek's voice shook with barely controlled anger. Nicole spent 2 years trying to convince me to steal my mother's home. When I finally saw what she was doing and put a stop to it, she went after Mom through you. That's a very serious accusation. It's a very serious situation. Derek stood up. My mother is 71 years old. She's just gotten her son back after 2 years of being manipulated by a woman who only cared about money. And now that same woman is trying to use the state to finish what I wouldn't do. How is that not obvious? Derek, Evelyn's voice was gentle. Sit down. He sat, but his hands were still clenched. Catherine spoke up. Ms. Hendricks, I've prepared documentation regarding every interaction between my client and the Hells Angels members in question. receipts for materials used in home repairs, photographs of the work completed, written statements from neighbors who've witnessed the visits. Everything demonstrates a pattern of genuine friendship in support, not exploitation. She slid the folder across the table. Patricia took it, but didn't open it. Her eyes moved from Catherine to Evelyn to Derek, calculating. I appreciate the documentation, but I'm required to conduct my own assessment. She looked at Evelyn. Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you some questions privately. Would your attorney and your son be willing to step outside for a few minutes? Evelyn's heart clenched. Is that necessary? It's standard procedure to ensure you're able to speak freely without influence. Catherine touched Evelyn's arm. It's okay, answer honestly. You have nothing to hide. They left. The kitchen suddenly felt very empty. Patricia leaned forward. Mrs. Carter, I want you to know that this conversation is confidential. If you're being threatened or coerced in any way, now is the time to tell me. Nothing you say will leave this room. Evelyn looked at this young woman, this stranger who held so much power over her life, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not anxiety, anger. Ms. Hendricks, Evelyn said slowly, I'm 71 years old. I've been a widow for 2 years. I've watched my son drift away and come back. I've survived more heartbreak than you can imagine. Her voice hardened. And I am nobody's victim. Patricia blinked. I'm not suggesting... Yes, you are. You're suggesting that I'm too old or too foolish to know when someone is taking advantage of me. You're suggesting that a group of people who saved my life and my sanity must have ulterior motives because they wear leather jackets. Evelyn stood up. Let me show you something. She walked to the mantelpiece and picked up a photograph. Walter smiling at the camera, his arm around her waist. This is my husband. 52 years of marriage. He died in this house, in this room while I watched. She set the photo down and picked up a tiny pair of knitted booties in a frame. This was supposed to be for my grandson. I held him for 3 days before fever took him. 3 days. Patricia's face had softened slightly. After Walter died, I thought I would die too. Not physically, just inside. I stopped caring about the house, stopped caring about myself. My son disappeared into his wife's ambitions, and I was alone. Evelyn walked back to the table. And then on the worst night of my life, a stranger knocked on my door with a dying baby in his arms. And I made a choice. What choice? To let someone in, to take a risk, to believe that not everyone in this world is out to hurt me. Evelyn sat down across from Patricia. The Hell's Angels didn't exploit me, Miss Hendricks. They saved me. They reminded me that I still have something to offer, that I'm not just a burden waiting to die. Silence stretched between them. Patricia set down her clipboard. Mrs. Carter, can I be honest with you? Please. I've been doing this job for 8 years. I've seen real exploitation, ugly, heartbreaking cases that keep me up at night. And I've seen vindictive family members use the system to settle scores. She paused. This complaint has all the hallmarks of the second type. Then why are you here? Because I have to investigate. Because the law doesn't let me ignore complaints, even ones that seem suspicious. Patricia picked up Catherine's folder and opened it for the first time. But between you and me, your daughter-in-law made a serious mistake. What do you mean? She thought filing a complaint would be enough to rattle you, make you question your friends, maybe even sign over control just to make the investigation go away. Patricia smiled faintly. Instead, you lawyered up, documented everything, and sat across from me with more fire in your eyes than most people half your age. Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. Did them on down. Does that mean? It means I'm going to write a very thorough report explaining that I found no evidence of exploitation, undue influence, or diminished capacity. Patricia closed the folder. I'm also going to recommend that any future complaints from this source be treated with extreme skepticism. The relief hit Evelyn like a wave. She put her hand over her heart, suddenly afraid it might beat right out of her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. Patricia stood up. You handled this exactly right. A lot of people would have crumbled under the pressure. You didn't. I had help. Yes, you did, and that's exactly my point. Patricia gathered her things. Mrs. Carter, the people in your life, Your son, your lawyer, your friends from the motorcycle club, they're not exploiting you. They're supporting you, and in my experience, that's rare, that's precious. She walked to the door, then turned back. One more thing. The complainant, your daughter-in-law, she may try other tactics, other ways to make trouble. If she does call me directly, I don't like being used as a weapon against innocent people. She handed Evelyn a business card and left. Derek and Catherine came rushing back in the moment the gray sedan pulled away. What happened? What did she say? Are you okay? Evelyn sank into her chair. She believed me. She's closing the case. Derek let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Catherine permitted herself a small smile. I had a feeling. She seemed reasonable. She was more than reasonable. Evelyn looked at the business card in her hand. She was kind. An hour later, Jack's motorcycle roared into the driveway. He burst through the door, Sarah right behind him, Grace bouncing in her arms. We saw the investigator leave. What happened? Is everything okay? Evelyn stood up and walked toward him. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. Jack froze for a moment. Then his arms came up around her, gentle and strong. That good, huh? He said softly. She believed me. She believed all of it. Evelyn pulled back, her eyes bright with tears. And she said the people in my life aren't exploiting me. They're supporting me. And that's precious. Sarah made a choked sound. Of course we're supporting you, your family. I know. Evelyn reached out and touched Grace's cheek. I finally know. The celebration lasted until dark. Razor showed up with a case of beer. Maggie brought 2 apple pies. Tommy fixed the squeaky hinge on the back door that had been bothering Evelyn for months. Derek sat on the porch with Jack talking quietly about things Evelyn couldn't hear, but when they came back inside, they were both smiling. It felt like a party. It felt like a family gathering. It felt like something Evelyn had stopped believing was possible. Late in the evening, as the others were getting ready to leave, Razor pulled Evelyn aside. I heard about what you said to the investigator, about not being anyone's victim. Evelyn shrugged. I was angry. No, you were powerful. Razor's eyes were warm. Most people spend their whole lives waiting for permission to stand up for themselves. You just did it. No hesitation, no apologies. I learned from good teachers. She nodded toward Jack and Sarah. Nah, that was all you. Razor put a heavy hand on her shoulder. Evelyn, I've known a lot of the people in my life. Judges, lawyers, politicians, criminals, saints. And I can tell you this, what you have, that steel in your spine, you can't teach that. You either have it or you don't. And I have it. Lady, you've got enough for 10 people. He squeezed her shoulder once, then turned to go. Get some sleep. You've earned it. One by one they left. The motorcycles roared away into the night, their taillights fading into the darkness. Derek was the last to go. He stood at the door, his keys in his hand, something unspoken in his eyes. Mom, I need to tell you something. What is it? He took a breath. That night, the night Dad died, I heard what you said. Evelyn's heart stopped. What do you mean? After the paramedics came, after they told us he was gone, I was in the hallway and I heard you praying. His voice cracked. You said, God, if someone has to go to take me instead. The memory slammed into her like a fist. She had said that, on her knees beside Walter's body, begging God for a miracle that wasn't coming. Derek, I didn't mean, I know that now. His eyes were wet. But for 2 years, I twisted those words in my head. I told myself you wanted to die, that you wanted to leave me behind, that you didn't care about being my mother anymore. Oh, Derek, no, I was begging God to spare him. I would have given anything, I know. He stepped forward and took her hands. I finally understand. You loved him so much that you would have traded your life for his. That's not abandonment. That's devotion. Evelyn couldn't speak. The tears were coming too fast. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for listening to Nicole, for turning my back on you, for taking 2 years to figure out what should have been obvious from the start. It's okay. It's okay. It's not okay. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. He pulled her into a hug. I love you, Mom. I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it. I love you too, sweetheart. I never stopped either. They held each other for a long time. When Derek finally left, Evelyn stood at the window and watched his taillights disappear just like she'd watched so many others. But this time was different. This time she knew he'd be back. She walked to the mantelpiece and picked up Walter's photograph. His smile seemed different somehow, warmer, like he approved of everything that had happened. "I think we're going to be okay," she whispered. "Finally, after everything, I think we're actually really going to be okay." The house settled around her, creaking and groaning in the familiar way old houses do. But it didn't sound lonely anymore. It sounded like home. 6 months changed everything. Spring arrived with a warmth that seemed to seep into every corner of Evelyn's life. The snow melted, the ground thawed, and the farmhouse that had felt like a tomb for 2 years now hummed with constant activity. Derek came every Sunday without fail. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he brought tools and to work on projects around the house. Once he showed up with a puppy, a golden retriever he'd found at the shelter, abandoned and scared. "Mom, meet Walter Jr." Evelyn burst into tears. "You named a dog after your father." "Dad always wanted a dog. You always said no." Derek grinned. "I figured it was time." Walter Jr. took to Evelyn, immediately following her everywhere, sleeping at the foot of her bed, barking at anyone who came to the door until he confirmed they were friendly. The Hells Angels came often too. Jack and Sarah visited twice a week, always with Grace, who had grown from a fragile newborn into a chubby, laughing baby who reached for Evelyn's face every time she saw her. "Gamma," Grace said one afternoon, clear as a bell. Evelyn froze. Did she just her first word? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "We've been practicing. She knows exactly who you are." Evelyn lifted Grace into her arms and held her close, breathing in that sweet baby smell. "Gamma's here, sweetheart. Gamma's always going to be here." The town's attitude had shifted too. People who had whispered about the bikers in Evelyn's yard now nodded respectfully when they saw them. The grocery store owners started keeping Grace's favorite crackers in stock. The postman who used to leave packages on the porch and hurry away now stayed for coffee and conversation. One morning, Evelyn found an envelope in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. "Mrs. Carter, I apologize for what I put you through. I was wrong and I was cruel. I've lost everything, my husband, my home, my reputation, and I have no one to blame but myself. I won't bother you again. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry." No signature, but Evelyn knew. Nicole. She showed the letter to Jack that afternoon. "What do you think it means?" she asked. Jack studied the handwriting, then set the letter down. "I think it means she finally hit bottom. Lost everything she was fighting for and realized it wasn't worth it. Should I respond?" "That's up to you." Jack met her eyes. "But if you're asking my opinion, some people need to sit in their consequences. Learn from them. Responding just gives her an opening to drag you back in." Evelyn nodded slowly. She folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and never looked at it again. Derek's divorce was finalized in April. He showed up that Sunday looking lighter than Evelyn had seen him in years. The dark circles under his eyes were gone. His shoulders were straight. He was even smiling. "It's done, Mom. Finally done." Evelyn hugged him tight. "How do you feel?" "Free." He pulled back and laughed, "Like I've been holding my breath for 5 years and I can finally breathe again." They sat on the porch together, watching Walter Jr. chase butterflies in the yard. The afternoon sun was warm on their faces. "I've been seeing someone," Derek said suddenly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Already? Not like that. I mean a therapist." He looked down at his hands. "Razor recommended her. She specializes in grief and family trauma." Razor recommended a therapist. Apparently he sends a lot of people her way. Veterans, club members who are struggling, anyone who needs help processing stuff. Derek shook his head. "That man is not what I expected." "No, he isn't," Evelyn smiled. "None of them are." Derek was quiet for a moment. "Then, Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, anything." "When I was at my worst, when I was pushing you away, treating you like the enemy, trying to take everything, did you ever hate me?" The question hit Evelyn like a physical force. She took a breath, let it out slowly. "Never, not for 1 second." "How is that possible after everything I did?" "Because you're my son." Her voice was steady, certain. "Mothers don't stop loving their children, Derek. Not even when those children hurt them. Not even when they're confused and angry and making terrible choices. She reached over and took his hand. I was heartbroken. I was disappointed. Sometimes I was furious, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped believing you'd find your way back. Derek's eyes glistened. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, Evelyn squeezed his hand, but you've got me anyway. The summer brought new challenges and new joys. Grace learned to walk wobbly, determined steps that carried her straight into Evelyn's waiting arms every time. Derek got a promotion at work, the first recognition he'd received since the divorce. Razor organized a charity ride for veteran mental health that raised over $50,000, with Evelyn cheering from the sidelines. And then on the hottest day of July, Jack knocked on Evelyn's door with a question that changed everything. We need to talk, he said. His face was serious in a way she hadn't seen since that first night in the storm. Evelyn's heart clenched. What's wrong? Is it Grace? Is it Sarah? Nothing's wrong. Everyone's fine. Jack stepped inside and sat down across from her at the kitchen table. I just need to ask you something, and I need you to really think before you answer. You're scaring me, Jack. I don't mean to. He took a breath. Evelyn, Sarah, and I have been talking about Grace, about her future, about the kind of support system we want her to have. Okay. And we've decided that we want you to be part of that future, officially. Evelyn frowned. I don't understand. Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. We want you to be Grace's godmother, legally, on paper, so that if anything ever happens to us, she'll have someone who loves her to take care of her. The world seemed to stop spinning. Jack, I'm 71 years old. By the time Grace is a teenager, you'll be the strongest, wisest woman she knows. Jack's eyes burned with intensity. Evelyn age is just a number. What matters is love. What matters is commitment. You saved Grace's life. You welcomed her into your heart without hesitation. There's no one else we trust more. But surely you have family, other club members, people who, we have family, you're looking at her. Jack leaned forward. Sarah lost her parents years ago. Mine are gone too. The club is family, yes, but for something this important for our daughter, we want someone who's already proven they'd do anything to keep her safe. Evelyn's hands were trembling. You really want me? We've never wanted anything more. The tears came then, not sad tears, not happy tears, something deeper, tears that came from a place she thought was sealed forever. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course, yes. Jack smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and transformed his whole face. Thank you, Evelyn. You have no idea what this means to us. I think I do. She wiped her eyes. I think I understand exactly. The ceremony happened a week later. It wasn't in a church. Sarah and Jack weren't religious in the traditional sense. Instead, they gathered at Evelyn's farmhouse, the place where Grace had been saved, the place where their unlikely family had first formed. The Hells Angels came in force. 30 motorcycles lined the driveway, gleaming in the summer sun. Men and women in leather stood shoulder to shoulder with Evelyn's neighbors, her church friends, even the postman who had become a regular guest. Derek stood beside Evelyn, his arm around her shoulders. You okay, Mom? Better than okay. She looked at the crowd, at the strange mix of people who had somehow become her community. I never thought I'd have this again. After Walter died, I thought family was over for me. Family's not over, Derek said. It just changed shape. The ceremony was simple. Sarah spoke first, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Evelyn, when I met you, my daughter was dying in my husband's arms. I had nothing left, no hope, no strength, and you opened your door. She took Grace from Jack and placed her in Evelyn's arms. You gave her back to us. Now we're giving her to you, not as a burden, as a gift. The most precious gift we have. Jack spoke next. In my world, family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty. It's about showing up when things get hard. It's about choosing each other every day, no matter what. He put his hand on Evelyn's shoulder. You chose us, Evelyn. On the worst night of our lives, you chose us. And we choose you, now and forever. Razor stepped forward with a small wooden box. Inside was a certificate, beautifully printed, legally binding, declaring Evelyn Grace Carter the official godmother of Grace Marie Morrison. Sign here, he said with a wink. Make it official. Evelyn's hands shook as she signed her name, but her signature was clear, strong, certain. When she finished, the crowd erupted in cheers. Motorcycles roared in celebration. Someone started music, old country songs, the kind Walter used to love. And Evelyn stood in the middle of it all, Grace in her arms, surrounded by people who loved her, and finally understood what family really meant. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Evelyn sat on her porch with Grace asleep in her lap. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The farmhouse stood solid behind her, filled with memories of loss and love and everything in between. Derek's car pulled into the driveway. He got out, but he wasn't alone. A woman was with him, mid-30s, dark hair, kind eyes. "Mom, there's someone I want you to meet." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Another surprise." "A good one, I hope." Derek helped the woman up the porch steps. "This is Rachel. We met at the therapy group Razor recommended." Rachel smiled nervously. "I've heard so much about you, Mrs. Carter. Derek talks about you all the time." "Does he now?" Evelyn looked at her son. "And how long has this been going on?" Derek's face flushed. "A couple months. I wanted to wait until I was sure before introducing you." "And are you sure now?" "I think so." He looked at Rachel with an expression Evelyn hadn't seen on his face in years, not since the early days with Nicole before everything went wrong. "She makes me want to be better mom, the version of myself I forgot existed." Evelyn stood up, carefully adjusting Grace in her arms. She walked over to Rachel and studied her face. "Do you love my son?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "I'm starting to. More every day." "And are you after his money?" "Mom," Derek protested. Rachel just laughed. "What money? Derek tells me he gave most of it away in the divorce." Evelyn smiled. "Good answer." She reached out and squeezed Rachel's hand. "Welcome to the family." Such as it is. The summer turned to fall turned to winter, and somewhere along the way Evelyn stopped counting the days since Walter's death. Not because she'd forgotten him, she could never forget him, but because her life had filled with so many new memories, new joys, new reasons to keep going. Grace's first birthday party was held at the farmhouse. 50 people came. There was cake and ice cream and more presents than any one-year-old could ever need. Grace smashed her hands into the frosting and laughed with pure delighted abandon. Derek and Rachel announced their engagement at Thanksgiving dinner. Evelyn cried. Derek cried. Even Razor, standing in the corner with a plate of turkey, wiped at his eyes when he thought no one was looking. Christmas was the biggest celebration Evelyn could remember. The farmhouse overflowed with people, Hell's Angels and church ladies, neighbors, and newcomers, everyone drawn together by something that couldn't quite be named. "You know what this is, right?" Jack said, finding Evelyn alone in the kitchen late that night. "What?" "This is what you created, all of it, the community, the connections, the family." He gestured toward the living room where Sarah was teaching Grace to dance while Derek and Rachel watched and laughed. "It all started with you opening a door." Evelyn shook her head. "I didn't create anything. You just saved a baby's life, and then you let us love you, and then you let yourself be loved." Jack's eyes were serious. "You know how rare that is? How many people spend their whole lives building walls instead of bridges?" Evelyn thought about Nicole, about the walls she'd built, the bridges she'd burned, about how different things might have been if she'd made different choices. "I almost didn't open that door," Evelyn admitted. "That night, my hand was on the lock and I almost walked away." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." "That's the difference, Evelyn. That one moment, that one choice." Yeah, Jack put his arm around her shoulders. "Everything you have now, everything all of us have, came from that." On New Year's Eve, Evelyn found herself alone on the porch. The others were inside, counting down to midnight, their voices loud and joyful. But Evelyn needed a moment. Just a moment. She looked up at the stars, the same stars that had watched over her that terrible night a year ago. The same sky, the same cold. But everything else had changed. She touched the bracelet on her wrist. It had never come off. Not once, not even for a second. "I wish you could see this, Walter," she whispered. "I wish you could see what happened, how everything fell apart and then came back together in ways I never expected." The door opened behind her. Jack stepped out, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. 30 seconds to midnight. Thought you might want one." Evelyn took the glass. "Thank you." They stood side by side, watching the stars, listening to the countdown inside. 10, 9, 8. I want to thank you, Evelyn said, for everything, for knocking on my door, for coming back, for making me part of your family. 7, 6, 5. Jack shook his head. You've got it backwards. You made us part of yours. 4, 3, 2. The door burst open. Derek and Rachel, Sarah and Grace Razor and the others. Everyone poured onto the porch, cheering, laughing, pulling Evelyn into the celebration. 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks exploded somewhere in the distance. Grace clapped her tiny hands. Derek kissed Rachel, and somewhere in the chaos, Evelyn felt Jack's hand squeeze hers once briefly before letting go. She looked around at the faces of her family, the son who had found his way back, the daughter-in-law she was learning to love, the bikers who had become brothers and sisters, the baby who called her Gamma. A year ago, she had been alone, forgotten, waiting to die. Now she was surrounded by more love than she knew what to do with. The weeks that followed were quiet, happy, full of small moments that added up to something beautiful. Derek and Rachel's wedding was planned for spring. Sarah went back to nursing school. Grace learned new words every day. Puppy for Walter Jr., cookie for anything sweet, no for everything else. And Evelyn watched it all unfold from her kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her heart fuller than it had ever been. One morning in February, a year to the day since the blizzard, Evelyn woke to find 20 motorcycles parked in her driveway. She rushed to the window, her heart pounding. Jack, what's happening? Is everything okay? Jack was already on her porch, a grin splitting his face. Happy anniversary, Gamma. Anniversary. 1 year since you saved Grace. 1 year since you became family. He gestured toward the assembled bikers. We thought that deserved a celebration. When they spent the day together, eating, laughing, telling stories about the night that had brought them all together, someone had even made a cake with Grace's picture on it, taken from that first Sunday visit, when she'd finally smiled at the camera. Late in the afternoon, Razor stood up and raised his glass. I want to make a toast to Evelyn Carter, the woman who taught us that family isn't about blood or patches or leather. It's about opening your door when someone needs you. It's about choosing love over fear. Hear, hear, the crowd echoed. Razor wasn't finished. I've been a Hell's Angel for 35 years. I've seen a lot of things, good and bad, beautiful and ugly, but I've never seen anything like what happened here. He looked at Evelyn with something like reverence. You changed us, Mrs. Carter. You reminded us why we ride, why we fight, why we protect each other. Evelyn stood up on shaking legs. I didn't do anything special. I just opened a door. And that's exactly what I mean. Razor smiled. Sometimes that's all it takes. One open door, one act of kindness, one moment of courage. He raised his glass higher. To Evelyn, the heart of this family. To Evelyn, the crowd roared. And Evelyn stood there surrounded by the people who loved her and finally believed what she'd been telling herself for months. She was home. Not just in this house, this farmhouse that had seen so much joy and sorrow, but in herself, in her own skin, in the life she had built from the ashes of everything she'd lost. That night, after everyone had gone, Evelyn sat in Walter's chair one last time. She looked around the room at the photographs on the mantelpiece, the bracelet on her wrist, Walter Jr. sleeping at her feet, at the toys scattered in the corner for Grace's visits, at the calendar marked with dinners and appointments and all the busy, beautiful things that filled her days. She picked up Walter's photograph and held it against her heart. I think I'm ready now, she whispered. Ready to stop grieving and start living. Really living. She traced the outline of his smile. You'd like them, Walter. Jack and Sarah and Grace. Derek is himself again. I have a family. A real family. She set the photograph back on the mantelpiece. But this time she added something beside it, a picture from Grace's birthday party, everyone crowded together, laughing and alive. Past and present, side by side. Loss and love intertwined forever. Evelyn walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. The same stars. The same darkness. But nothing was the same. Because she was not the same. She had been broken. And she had healed. She had been alone. And she had found her people. She had been afraid to open her door. And she had opened it anyway. And that single act of courage had created ripples that spread outward in ways she never could have imagined, touching lives, healing wounds, building bridges that would stand for generations. She touched the bracelet on her wrist one more time. woven leather and silver beads, a gift from a stranger who became a daughter, a symbol of a night that changed everything. Thank you, she whispered to Walter, to Grace, to the universe that had brought them all together. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late. Never too late to love. Never too late to hope. Never too late to start again. The fire crackled in the stove. Walter Jr. shifted in his sleep, and somewhere in the distance, the low rumble of a motorcycle echoed through the night, a reminder that her family was never far away. Evelyn Carter smiled and closed her eyes. She was 72 years old. She had lost everything and found everything. She had opened her door to strangers and gained a family. And she finally understood the truth that had been waiting for her all along. That one act of kindness can change the world. That love is always worth the risk. That home is not a place, it's the people who show up when the storm hits. And that family, true family, is not the one you're born into. It's the one you choose. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you never know whose life you might change by simply opening your door.